Hello and welcome. Wundarr is a reasonably obscure character in the Marvel Universe. He was created by the writer, Steve Gerber, and the artist, Val Mayerick. The character first appeared in Adventure into Fear number 17 from 1973. Following this one appearance, the character would be quickly inserted into Marvel 2-in-1 with the express purpose of making changes to satisfy their publishing competition, DC. In that first appearance, Man-Thing discovers a 1950s-style starship. He thrashes it around a bit, hears something inside, and then throws it against a tree. It explodes, and out pops the man-child, Wundarr. The comic cuts to Wundarr's origin. We are introduced to his parents, Hectu and Soja, on a distant planet called Dakum. Hectu, a scientist, is convinced the sun will go nova within a year. He presents his findings to the Science Council, who dismiss his concerns. In fact, they believe he is crazy, and they warn him not to spread this unfounded rumor to the population. Hectu returns home, and for the next 6 months, he constructs a starship for his newborn child, Wundarr. The Science Council, having learned of Hectu's starship, kill both Hectu and Soja, but not before Wundarr is shot into space. The ship aimlessly wanders the cosmos before crashing on Earth in 1951. This crash is witnessed by a less-than-kindly older couple who decide not to investigate in case the ship contains Martians, or worse yet, communists. The starship goes undiscovered for the next 22 years. This is an origin story that should sound familiar to anyone slightly familiar with comics. It is beat for beat the same as Superman's, except for the part where the couple decide not to investigate the crash. Otherwise, it's identical. There are a few distinct differences. The fate of Wundarr's planet is ambiguous. It's not known whether the sun exploded or not. Wundarr has the intelligence and awkwardness of a child. And because he's just exited the metal womb of a starship, Wundarr thinks Man-Thing is his mother. This leads to some unintentionally aggressive reactions, where Wundarr and Man-Thing end up fighting in the middle of a nearby town. Man-Thing, being a creature with no attention span, gets bored and wanders away during this fight. Wundarr once again tries to get Man-Thing's attention and motherly approval, but the muck monster ignores him. When Wundarr persists, Man-Thing gives him a little slap that burns the frightened man-child. Shocked and unhappy, Wundarr leaps away and out of the story. If you're new and you like what you see, please subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. If you want to go a step further and directly support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description. As intended, Wundarr was a rather blatant parody of DC's popular hero. The character even wears an outfit that is primarily blue with red trunks and boots. Not to mention, like the early days of Superman, Wundarr leaps around instead of flying. It's a set of similarities that did not go unnoticed by DC, and they were not amused. Perhaps they were also not amused by the implication that Superman is an emotionally stunted, childlike character prone to violent temper tantrums, and in doing so, causes more destruction than good. In 2006, Gerber had this to say about Wundarr, quote, "What I intended as a parody, DC saw as plagiarism." Unquote. After publication, there were a few allegedly heated conversations between the Marvel publisher, Stan Lee, the editor-in-chief, Roy Thomas, and some unnamed people at DC. After which, there was an unofficial agreement between the two companies to alter Wundarr in a way where he would be quite distinct from any Superman comparison. Roy Thomas had this to say in 2017, quote, "I had seen the character before it went out and told Steve, it's gotta be changed. And Steve didn't change it, or he changed it very little. Stan was displeased with me, and he was ready to root Steve out there as a sacrificial lamb, partly to mollify DC, but partly because he knew that Steve knew better." Unquote. To that point, Gerber also stated, quote, "I'm sure Roy must have conveyed to me Stan's displeasure with the incident. I'm still amazed, though, that DC took it so seriously." Unquote. Overall, this shows how aggressive DC has been in protecting their copyright. Their drawn-out litigation against Fawcett over Captain Marvel being one infamous example, and this objection to Wundarr being another. In your humble narrator's opinion, if DC hadn't taken offense, Wundarr would have probably faded into obscurity. The reason being, it doesn't appear that Gerber had any plans for Wundarr beyond that one appearance. He was a throwaway character from a story that was probably written quickly to meet a deadline. Furthermore, the subsequent appearances Gerber wrote are rather obligatory and were clearly intended to change the character enough to address DC's concerns and legal insinuations, if any were made. 5 months later, in Marvel 2-in-1 number 2, Wundarr literally falls out of the sky in front of Namorita. She saves him from drowning, and he is quickly scared off by Namor. This cuts to a scene obviously intended to distance Wundarr from Superman. The scene involves some expository dialogue between two men from the planet Dakum, who have been sent to find and eliminate Wundarr. It's also learned that Wundarr's father was wrong about the sun going nova, and he was actually insane. The planet Dakum is alive and well. After this scene, Wundarr once again literally falls out of the sky in front of Ben Grimm. Naturally, this leads to a battle that is soon joined by Namor and Namorita. The two men from Dakum release a killer robot and also join the fight. But when the odds are not in their favor, they retreat and leave the planet. Wundarr is left in the hands of Ben Grimm. The following issue adds more distance between Wundarr and Superman. Reed Richards examines Wundarr and concludes the cosmic rays that changed them into the Fantastic Four also changed Wundarr. Furthermore, he's an energy sponge that absorbs the radiation naturally given off by all matter. So it's not the yellow sun that gives Wundarr his powers. To finalize the change, Wundarr is given a new outfit to wear, one that will help him contain the energy he absorbs. With that, the initial transformation of Wundarr is now complete. There was only one final step: completely write him out of the series. In issue 4, Ben Grimm takes Wundarr to the park where the childlike hero causes mayhem. Namorita and her friend, Annie, just happen to be there too. Once the situation is resolved, Namorita, who is a supporting character without a solo series, takes Wundarr to live with her somewhere way off panel. It really reads like a writer washing his hands of the entire Wundarr situation. Again, in your narrator's humble opinion, these 3 appearances seem specifically designed to ensure Wundarr is sufficiently changed, and that's their entire purpose. Typically, an ongoing B or C plot that's subservient to the main plot is not uncommon, but it also builds towards being featured as the main plot. These appearances don't do that. Wundarr is simply changed to be so different from his original appearance that he's practically a new character. Once that's accomplished, he's casually placed to the side and written entirely out of the story. However, the changes to Wundarr don't end there. But first, he has a few very minor background appearances to make. In 2-in-1 issues 8 and 9, Wundarr makes a cameo appearance. All that's established is he continues to be raised by Namorita and Annie. Otherwise, he's completely irrelevant to what's going on. Wundarr's next completely irrelevant appearance would be 3 years later in Ms. Marvel issue number 15. He gets punched in the face by Tiger Shark and Ms. Marvel, and that's it. He's just collateral damage for a page and a half. That same year, in Marvel 2-in-1 issue 42, Wundarr is seen being taken into custody at Project Pegasus. It's never established when he was arrested. The vague reason he was forcibly and illegally detained was due to his energy sponge powers, which Project Pegasus wants to exploit. And Captain America justifies the detainment by saying Wundarr is an illegal alien, implying he has no basic human rights, I guess? Anyway, Project Pegasus wants to expose Wundarr to the Cosmic Cube and unlock its secrets. Ben Grimm is perfectly fine with this mentally stunted individual being used as a test subject involving a highly dangerous object. In fact, Ben convinces Wundarr to sit down and be experimented on by a bunch of random strangers. Man, the 70s were definitely a different time. Naturally, the experiment is sabotaged and Wundarr ends up in a coma. Almost a year later, this development is resolved in the classic Project Pegasus storyline from 1979. The story involved Ben Grimm temporarily being assigned to this high-security research facility. But as we'll soon discover, Project Pegasus is about as secure as an average shopping mall. Supervillains are constantly breaking in and causing mayhem. Anyway, for the majority of the storyline, Wundarr remains comatose and unresponsive. He finally awakens in issue 56, but he doesn't become active until the next issue. Even though that issue is supposed to be a team-up between the Thing and Wundarr, Wundarr doesn't do anything other than wander down a hallway and look at the Cosmic Cube. Wundarr and the Thing don't interact whatsoever. The next issue, Wundarr suddenly appears with a new costume, proclaims he's the Aquarian, and he intends to bring peace to the world. He has been reborn, and his intelligence has been heightened due to exposure to the Cosmic Cube. So, yeah, this is the dawning of the age of the Aquarian. If I could, I'd insert the music video by the Fifth Dimension right here. so just pretend it's playing as background music right now. For the most part, this was it for Wundarr in the Marvel Universe. He has made a number of very minor appearances since then, but nothing that would be considered notable or worthwhile mentioning. And usually, when he does appear, he's referred to as the Aquarian or Wundarr the Aquarian, never simply Wundarr. Not to mention, he maintains his flower power cult leader status. So that's a storyline just waiting for a good writer to exploit. In the end, Wundarr was a throwaway parody character. His first appearance was a goofy Elseworld story with the premise of, what if Superman landed in a swamp and went undiscovered for 2 decades? Considering Wundarr's childlike and childish behavior, it's a concept that's hard to take seriously. Sure, it doesn't have obvious jokes containing clear punchlines, and the character did appear in a horror title, but it's still an obvious work of satire. Because DC took offense, Wundarr was suddenly treated as an act of plagiarism rather than a very obvious spoof of a well-known property. It appears as if Steve Gerber scrambled to rewrite the character in an effort to mollify both Marvel and DC. Then, once that was accomplished, Wundarr was dumped into the background in order to be forgotten. But, just to be safe, Wundarr is transformed once again into something that is so far removed from the original intent that he's a completely new character. In other words, something that wasn't intended to be taken seriously ended up being taken seriously. Personally, I find it fascinating the ridiculous lengths the various writers went to in order to take a silly, neutered character and rework it into something even less interesting. All that's left to say is thank you for watching, or listening, whatever the case may be. Thanks to all my fine supporters on Patreon and on YouTube. If you have the ways and means, please help out. I'm about 1/3 of the way to my overall goal of being able to do this full time, so any and all support is greatly appreciated. Extra special thanks to Phil Sagan, Edward Clayton Andrews, Corey Drew, Alexa Zernish, Brian Deaton, Johnny Lim, Steve White, Taylor Dull, and Matt Marino. You are all justified and ancient. Hey, look, a playlist. Why not watch some other videos? Until next time.